To Europe now, or rather off the coast of Europe, for Roving Report looks not at a country, but at an ocean. The North Atlantic, that vast ocean which fishermen have battled for 1,000 years. Men from a dozen different nations meet on these grey, forbidding seas in their search for rich shoals of herring, plaice and cod. Together with the North Sea and the Norwegian Sea, the Atlantic puts fish on the dinner tables of half the world. In addition to doing battle with the elements, the seamen have frequently fought amongst themselves. There have been cod wars, herring wars, and even a mackerel war. Parts of these seas have been fished out, others are near that point, a situation that has led trawlermen to sail further and further in search of the elusive shoals. They gather among freezing floes around Iceland and Greenland, where they work as near as possible to the fish-rich territorial waters. It can be a lonely, hard, comfortless life, and one which is frequently fraught with danger. Though some fishermen find themselves going further afield after their catches, others continue to work offshore and hope that legislation will keep foreign competitors at bay. These are English mackerel boats fishing off the southwest coast of Britain. The men, who still fish with simple hooked lines, take back to shore only a ton of fish a day. What angers these men, who fish mackerel for a continental market, is that just outside Britain's 12-mile limit lie the Russian super-trawlers, each one of which can alone catch more mackerel than are eaten in Britain each day. The fishermen have seen the herring and the pilchard go from their waters, and mackerel, according to marine scientists, is the only fish around Britain's coasts that is still in plentiful supply, although they warn that it too is being overfished. But even this small-scale fishing is more than just the livelihood of a few Cornishmen. It's also big business.
1995, 1985, 1975, 70, 1960 years, brothers. What there are?
Alan, where are you?
7 kid out available, that's leaving 23.
The money is real, the bidding at this auction typically fierce. The world demands fish on the menu and has to be prepared to pay dearly for it.
D&D, what there are in that?
Got you. I've got you. 20 pound, 25, 20, 15, 10, 20 pound back, 20 pound. 1995, 19...
The dealers have watched fish prices rocket in recent years, and if the trend continues, fish could become a luxury just too expensive for most housewives to afford.
1995, 1985, 75, 60. 55, 51, 4, 35, 30. 25, 20, 15, 10. 95, 90 pound.
The fishermen themselves aren't the only ones who rely on the ocean for their livelihood. Other industries, like kipper smoking, are totally reliant on a good catch. Much of the industry is bound up with rural communities, particularly in Scotland and southwest England, where other work is scarce, and the total economy depends in one way or another on fish. The disappearance of one species of fish would have the same effect on this tiny village as the closure of a pit would have on a mining town. For small-time Britons, this is the enemy, a Russian super-trawler heading for shelter off the Cornish coast as the radio gives warning of an impending storm. By British standards, the Russian trawlers are titanic. This typical Soviet stern trawler, at about 2,200 tons, is 10 times larger than any British fishing boat in the southwest. And it's just one of around 60 East European vessels at present mopping up the mackerel shoals in the English Channel and Irish seas. Just after midnight, 20 miles out of the English port of Falmouth, two Russian trawlers rendezvous with their 15,000-ton mothership to transfer their catches. With their holds empty again, the trawlers will be able to continue their fishing operations for months at a time. It's the sheer scale of this Soviet fishing effort that angers traditional fishermen and helps to headline their claims that fish stocks on the continental shelf are running frighteningly low. The near-shore fishermen of Britain claim that every other species besides mackerel, from sole and plaice off the southeast coast to the herring off northwest Scotland, could disappear completely unless urgent action is taken to conserve present stocks. For the fishing nations are talking now, not just in tons of fish caught, but in thousands of tons and hundreds of thousands of tons. Modern trawlers are today landing catches that would have seemed impossible 20 years ago, and scientists have woken up to the danger. Fish is the last major source of food still hunted in the wild, and like the North American buffalo, some species are threatened with extinction. The biggest factory trawlers now not only net the catch, but while still at sea, gut and process into frozen fillets. It's scenes like these, with fish being processed on the conveyor belt system, that is worrying marine scientists. At any one time, Soviet bloc countries have up to 200 trawlers round Britain's coast. Holland has about 90 vessels stationed there, and so has Denmark. Norway has around 70 trawlers, while France has 55, Belgium 46, and Germany has 10 trawlers. All, claim the Britons, menace their fish stocks. The Atlantic's maritime nations strictly enforce their territorial limits, and penalties are severe for those caught within them. The captain of this Soviet trawler found that out to his cost. Caught fishing within Irish waters, he had his entire catch confiscated, and that meant a loss of between £50,000 and £100,000. A Romanian trawler, also caught within Eire's 12-mile limit, suffered the same fate, and the vessel itself was impounded because of non-payment of a heavy additional fine. It's not just where the hunters fish that worries the maritime nations, but also how they fish. British fishermen claim that continental trawlermen don't always obey the rules regarding net mesh sizes. The type of net, too, is an important factor. This diagram shows a trawler seine netting, the method most acceptable to conservationists, with the net being pulled through the middle water. Underwater, we can take a closer look at just how this acceptable form of trawling works. The captain's found a good shoal, and the majority of fish in it are already in the net. But some can get away, especially those younger fish which are small enough to wriggle their way through the large mesh. Not so acceptable is this form of fishing called beam trawling. It's much favoured by the Dutch vessels. The net is pulled along the seabed with chains to catch sole and plaice, and critics claim much damage is done by this to the fish and to the seabed itself. It's claimed that the heavy chains disturb the seabed too much and destroy the food which the flatfish need. Moves are already afoot to outlaw some of the more destructive methods of fishing, including purse seining. In this method, used widely by Russian ships, the net is so large and the volume of fish so great that small fry caught in the middle of the net just can't escape the pressure. Fish are sucked aboard through a fish pump, with little thought to the size or quality of the catch. This method has already been banned in the Celtic Sea. All this modern technology is in danger of destroying the very commodity it sets out to catch. Herring is in real danger off Scotland's north coast. Sole, herring and haddock are being affected off the east coast, and there are fears for the sole and plaice in the south. More and more maritime nations are setting fishing limits to preserve the fish around their shores for themselves. Iceland has already established a 200-mile zone. Canada, Norway and the United States plan to follow suit. But the question mark is over the EEC. While the common market wants a 200-mile community limit, Britain and Ireland have been insisting on an inner 50 miles fishing zone exclusively for themselves. We asked British Foreign Minister Anthony Crosland why EEC talks in Luxembourg, aimed at reaching agreement on limits, ended in deadlock.
The main stumbling block was a question as to whether we should go ahead with extending to 200 miles and making agreements with Iceland and other third countries straight away, which is what I wanted, obviously, and what I think a majority of countries wanted, or whether, on the other hand, we should not go ahead until we got agreement on the whole of the internal regime, on the quotas and the exclusive coastal belts and the rest of it. And as far as Britain is concerned, it's in our interest to go ahead. We must get ahead with agreement with Iceland, for example.
If there is no agreement at the next meeting on the 29th and 30th of October, will you go ahead alone in negotiations with Iceland?
Yes, we shall have to. I mean, I said to the Council this afternoon that if there were no community agreement to go ahead in a fortnight's time, then given that the present agreement with Iceland runs out on November the 31st, then we'd have no alternative. We would have to go ahead on our own, by ourselves, and that would practically bust the common fisheries policy. I hope it won't happen, but we'd have no other alternative.
The sheer volume of fishing around the British Isles has caused the British fishermen not only to turn on their common market neighbours, but even each other, with Cornish trawlermen complaining about Scottish boats coming south after their mackerel. While the British small fisherman knows he must modernise his methods to remain competitive, he still maintains that the fish close to his shores is an asset that belongs only to him. Without immediate and favourable legislation, he claims, this scene will simply become a part of history.